So Dr. John Johnson is our speaker tonight. He's the CEO and founder of Align Security, a cybersecurity consulting firm. He is also a founding member of the Docent Institute, Security Advisor Alliance, Cyber Education Foundation, an advisor at Cybersecurity Collaborative, a member of SC Media Editorial Board, and serves on advisory boards for security and emerging technology companies. John is a cybersecurity professor at Excelsior College, where he's developed and taught numerous graduate cybersecurity courses. He spent nearly 18 years as the security architect for John Deere, where he managed security infrastructure and developed strategy and secure architecture solutions for protecting a global corporate network, endpoints, industrial systems, and the supply chain. His experience spans the public and private sectors, as well as industry verticals, technology, manufacturing, finance, energy, healthcare, education. John was previously network security manager for the theoretical division at Los Alamos National Laboratory and an experimental nuclear physicist developing radiation detection systems for nuclear remediation and non-proliferation. John is a frequent speaker at industry conferences and serves on several program committees, including RSA Conference, Black Hat, InfoWarCon, CornCon. Over his career, he has served in leadership roles in technical and professional societies and is currently IEEE USA VP of Communications, serving on IEEE Computer Society Board of Governors, chair of Iowa-Illinois section, and on the Region 4 XCOM. John has maintained his CISSP and CRISC certifications and has received various awards in recognition of his contribution to the profession. He is a IEEE senior member, charter member of FAIR Institute, and distinguished fellow of the Ponemon Institute. With that, which is mighty impressive, John Johnson.
Okay, so Internet of Things. The Internet of Things is amongst us. It's all around us. It's more and more every year. I imagine that there's a lot of Internet of Things in this room that aren't there, but I have my Fitbit, and I've got my phone, and my computer, and I've got things in my vehicle. These are billions of devices connected and seamlessly communicating all around us to produce a smarter, more efficient society. Sensors that tell us about humidity and weather and things like that. Controllers, smart devices, they permeate the world around us, and as the technology advances. As computing power, speed, and communications enable devices to become smaller and smarter and communicate faster, eventually everything could be connected to the internet. Again, that can be good, that can also be bad. So if we look back at Internet of Things, we did start off with embedded systems and industrial control systems and things like that, and then we would connect them up to wires, and we would network them with KMAC or network SCADA devices, power systems, even before a lot of the consumer applications. The Internet of Things encompasses a lot. The term came about in around 1999, initially to promote RFID technology, if we remember when that was all starting to materialize. The popularity of the term didn't really accelerate until around 2010 or 11, reached mass market in early 2014. Machine-to-machine or the industrial internet are not opposing concepts to the Internet of Things, rather they're subsegments. All right, so the three major parts that make up the Internet of Things are the edge, the connection, and the analytics. The edge is the interface to the physical world. Think of this as the sensors that collect the data. The connection is the wireless communication methods used to transmit this data. For applications like self-driving cars, manufacturing, and robotic surgery, real-time analysis requires extremely high data rates and low latency. So 5G looks to be something that will accommodate this by powering global data transmission rates at very high frequencies, such as 2800 gigahertz. This will allow millions of low power, low data rate devices to be connected, while also being able to handle occasional spikes of high bandwidth pulses of data. This will allow IoT to have a virtually unlimited number of things with embedded connectivity. Big data analytics takes the data and turns it into something useful, something valuable and actionable. As the number of devices and the amount of data being processed grows exponentially, cloud computing platforms will give way to fog computing, which is sometimes called edge computing. We can see here that we have the data collection, we're communicating the data through gateways and data acquisition systems. Traditionally, 5 years ago, this all went out to Amazon or into the cloud, to data centers. If you're doing robotic surgery, you might like something that has lower latency. And so you might want to have some processing power that's close by. And that's really what this edge computing or fog computing gives you. All right, so we have smart grid. This architecture goes way beyond what we do for consumers. It gives us a smart grid and enables us to deliver the right amount of energy in the form of various forms for energy consumers. It can allow consumers to even sell back their energy and make power distribution more efficient. We have connected medical devices that also are IoT. In the healthcare sector, IoT offers many benefits ranging from patient monitoring to providing better insights in patient care, even remote medicine and surgery. The global medical device market is expected to reach an estimated $409.5 billion. I don't know that they need the decimal point there. That's probably a good estimate. About $410 billion by 2023, growing at 4.5% per year between now and then. We have smart cities. IoT leads to smart cities, smart homes, smart cars, smart retail. So we have another little video clip here.
Throughout the annals of science fiction, future cities are typically dystopias. Think of the bleak lives of city dwellers in Blade Runner, Metropolis, or The Caves of Steel. Recent projections show that by 2050, 2/3 of the global population will live in cities, which makes it imperative that our future cities aren't vast urban hellscapes, but are instead smart urban centers with a dash of sci-fi, devices, roads, and lampposts all talking to each other, making life in cities safer and smoother. And this transformation is already beginning. A smart city is a place where items around town are connected. Streets, buildings, personal devices, cars, power grids, all sending data back and forth, passively working together to improve the community. Imagine public buses that trigger sensors in the roads, providing a real-time ETA. Streetlights that dim or brighten depending on foot traffic. Stoplights warning of an accident ahead. At the core, a smart city needs two things: sensors to collect data, and the connectivity to send and receive it. Some cities were early on the connectivity part, like Barcelona, which has had fiber optic cables embedded below its streets for more than 30 years. Other regions, like in the US, have been slower on network infrastructure, but they're catching up. Meanwhile, sensors have become smaller, cheaper, and more powerful, giving rise to the Internet of Things. It's no wonder that the number of connected devices jumped to 8.4 billion in 2017, an increase of 1/3 in a single year. With these two major technological pieces in place, spots around the globe are launching large-scale smart city projects. In Barcelona, sensor-embedded parking spots connect with an app that directs drivers to available spaces. Street lamps brighten automatically, and they're part of Barcelona's Wi-Fi network, providing free internet access across the city. Similar smart city projects are underway in cities like Stockholm, Amsterdam, Copenhagen, and Columbus, Ohio. Some focusing on energy usage, others on safety or public transportation, but all hoping to make life in cities that much better. The hardware and connectivity are here, but truly smart cities need systems talking to each other. And that's not always the case with so many disparate projects. firms like Ford and Qualcomm are working on languages to connect these systems. Meanwhile, industry experts are already pointing to ethical concerns. A smart city necessarily requires tons of data to be collected and stored, which comes at a high cost, both financially and for citizens' privacy.
All right, so I like animation and graphics. It keeps the audience awake. But when we look at the projects, I have some recent statistics here, 2018. Traffic is one of the largest segments that smart cities are looking at. And if you think about, I mean, I drove up here today and I used a GPS app. And this GPS app is actually sending my data out over cellular to some central processing facility and then sending things back. And so we don't have vehicles communicating peer-to-peer, machine to machine. We're not tied into smart cities, but if you look at the traffic snarl around any major metropolitan area, you can think that if you had the sensors, you had the ability for vehicles to, at least at some low level, communicate with one another and know what else is out there. And if you could integrate that in with the smart city, that maybe you could get traffic to flow a little bit better than it does. So smart farming, precision farming, the use of sensors, self-driving tractors, drones is here. We're starting to see this now. Precision farming, agronomics, and higher yields are needed to more effectively feed a larger future population, which is expected to reach 9.6 billion by 2050, without having more land for farming. Sensors will provide data on soil conditions, insects, disease, weather, and more. GPS will precisely guide tractors and field equipment. At John Deere a few years ago, I think our precision farming was down to under 2 centimeters. All this data helps to improve yields and make farms more competitive and feed the planet. All right, I have another clip here. These are all short.
How will farmers be able to feed 1 billion more people? Or 2 billion more? Smart farming using intelligent connected devices can help them to make better use of water, spot diseases and prevent them from spreading, automate cultivation, and use data to increase yields. And that's all possible today with the Internet of Things. In fact, the use of IoT techniques for farming has the potential to boost food production by 70% by 2050. IoT is changing the game. Verizon's expertise can simplify things to help you stay ahead. Learn how.
All right, so one of the impediments for farmers is really rural broadband. If they don't have the connectivity, they can't fully take advantage of this. And I know that Verizon maybe is taking the lead in the U.S. in deploying 5G. Is that right? But these 5G cells, because of the frequency, instead of expanding out a couple kilometers, these cells each go about 300 feet. So you need a lot more of these cells or access points for 5G. And so I think the deployment is not going to be, it's going to be faster in some metropolitan areas. And I know that in Congress, they're still working on sort of like rural electrification, if we go back 50 years. They're working on rural broadband to really enable some of this. All right, a couple other interesting things with ag and farming. Who would have thought put Fitbit on your cows, right? Keep your cows healthy. And of course, this is a very real thing to tackle animal poaching. They also use IoT in conjunction with blockchain for fake drugs, right, for the illegitimate drugs, and De Beers uses it to prevent the resale of blood diamonds. All right, so we start to see that we now combine all of these things, and we have this digital life that we and our children and our grandchildren and future generations will be immersed in, all the way from when they're a young age as babies with baby monitors and other things through school, shopping, retail, transportation, at the office, in the factory, and all around the city. Did I get that? All right, so now let's go on to and talk about industrial IoT. So there are lots of applications for industrial IoT. I think that we may have familiarity with industrial control systems and SCADA and embedded systems, factory systems for manufacturing. These have been around for a long time. I think that the difference now is they're getting smaller and smarter, and they're all getting connected, and industry is trying to use big data then to leverage these to add value. And so here's a list of 15. The Industrial IoT Consortium lists 15 categories of industrial IoT or IIoT. I won't read through them all. But just to emphasize that it's about value, so Harley-Davidson reduced its build-to-order cycle by a factor of 36 and grew their profitability by 3 to 4% by shifting to full IoT-enabled plants. All right, so just to draw a comparison, we have the consumer on the left. We have a single or few operators. On the industrial IoT side, we're starting to see more machine-to-machine, peer-to-peer. It's a much more complex system or system of systems in order to gain intelligence. And industry will start to attach sensors every place that it makes sense. Some of the industrial IoT that Siemens might have, I worked with an RFP with Siemens and some other companies looking at industrial lighting. Right, so this room, when it was designed, might have had a timer. If it couldn't tell that there was anybody in the room, it would turn the light off. Or after a certain amount of time, it would turn the light off. In the factories now, you have sensors. you're detecting things real time and you're capturing that data so that you can go back and you can evaluate it and you can improve. So we consider this to be a fourth industrial revolution. The first industrial revolution was steam-based machines. The second, energy-based mass productions. Then we had computers and internet-based knowledge. And now we have intelligent-based business models leveraging IoT. So what we just talked about here, Industry 4.0, or the next revolution, will be adding a projected $15 trillion in value to the global GDP by 2035. All right, a little industrial IoT video. I'm trying to keep these short. I don't want to bore you with videos, but they're fun. They have music. All right, it's a kind of.
What if the next big thing?
This one may
wasn't
not have
a big
music.
thing at all? What if it's a lot of little things all waking up? Your business is part of a global phenomenon called the Internet of Things, connecting people, products, and communities all across the globe.
From manufacturing, critical public utilities, to the shipping of goods. Smart technology has ushered in a new era for the industrial sector.
With Splunk, adopting the revolution of the growing number of internet-connected devices and sensors is easy. Splunk provides a transformative, data-driven approach that shifts your business lens from reactive to predictive and preventive industrial operations. How does Splunk make this possible? Splunk lets you use machine data generated from industrial control systems, SCADA systems, operational technology systems, sensor data, and human data to search and analyze information across your entire environment. With all your data across diverse sources, Splunk makes it easy to monitor and analyze issues, find trends, and detect anomalies so you can fix issues in real time. Splunk shifts root cause analysis into the hands of the people that need it most, the engineers on the factory floor. Create asset hierarchies on your industrial assets, create interactive dashboards, and set personalized alerts with a couple of clicks. Splunk's robust platform has machine learning and AI capabilities built in, so you can predict and prevent imminent outages without affecting production downtime.
Splunk's real-time monitoring and predictive analytics help drive plant performance, improve product quality, and reduce equipment downtime.
The IoT revolution is here. Join millions of users around the world who are rethinking the future of industrial operations with machine data and Splunk.
All right, so I'm not advertising for any of these companies. They have interesting little YouTube videos. And I think what it does is it highlights what I was saying, is you're collecting this data and you're using it, you're not throwing it away. And when you start to aggregate the data, then you can even get more value. You can get it out there in the hands of the people who can use it on the front lines. And if we look at the history of computing power, storage, and bandwidth, what really drives and has converged to give us the IoT scenario that we have today and going into the future is that these have all become cheap enough that we can go out there and put out sensors, intelligent sensors and devices that can be as cheap as a penny. And this means that we're going to see a world covered in sensors. I think that, I forget who it was that referred to this. I think Cisco maybe as IoT fabric sort of covering the planet. This growth of IoT devices is exponential. And in the next 5 years, the prediction is that we could reach 80 billion devices connected online. And so this is a huge impact globally to our economy. By 2030, this could be adding 14.2 trillion to the global economy, and between now and then growing at a rate of about 7.3%. If we look at the spending on IoT worldwide, we have 2015 is the light blue and the dark blue is 2020. And so we can see a huge increase in discrete manufacturing, transportation and logistics, utilities, B2C, and across the board, investment is going up tremendously. Consumer electronics and transportation really are the fastest growing sectors here. We can see how this looks just between last year and projected out to 2022. And as far as global projects with IoT, smart cities and connected industry are leading. The goals for IoT differ from country to country. In the US, the driver is reducing overall cost. And if you look to China and the countries on the right, their interest is increasing competitiveness. And then South Africa, Brazil, Germany, they're looking at improving their business processes. This is from an article in Forbes that's linked there. And you can see there are a lot of companies that are out there selling or involved in the ecosphere of IoT. I'm not going to read those. All right, so what are the enablers of IoT? We kind of spoke about this before, that 5G will really help to enable the rapid growth and adoption of IoT and lead to billions of devices permeating the world around us. 5G can provide 100 times faster transmission rates at 1/50th the latency of 4G. It's much more scalable. Using 5G, you can have independent channels. Good for very sensitive applications, factory robotics, robotic surgery. 5G can allow us to get these billions of devices talking to one another because we can enable machine-to-machine and peer-to-peer communications. With 5G, security and privacy are improved, and again, connected assets lead to ideally more productivity. Just some more statistics about 5G. I'm not an expert on 5G, but as you might guess, I do have a video on it. This might be the last video. Let's see where my pointer is here. So the other reason for the videos is that they highlight all these multiple uses that I would forget to even mention because I don't often think about them. So they might spark a thought in the audience. You might see something and go, wow, I didn't even think about how that would benefit from being connected. So we talked about edge computing or fog computing. This is a real important enabler because it moves some of the heavy lifting, some of the analytics closer to the end devices. IoT can generate an unfathomable amount of data. General Electric has reported that one jet engine creates a terabyte of data in 5 hours. Machine learning is needed to help sort, cleanse, and process this flood of sensor data. If you have to upload all this to the cloud, that's very time consuming. Fog computing steps in to push the border of the cloud closer to the edge devices. Often computing will take place in a hybrid cloud computing environment with a mix of public cloud and private fog networks. Self-driving vehicles and healthcare are two examples of applications that will benefit from more real-time fog computing. Fog computing can also be more secure by design than traditional cloud solutions because you're keeping it local. So we talked about 5G, we talked about fog computing. What's another enabler? AI and machine learning. It's important to get the intelligence also moved out to the edge where the devices are. So I have some examples, not a video, of artificial intelligence and how it's improved. So artificial intelligence was coined 57 or so years ago, and now it allows you to distinguish between puppies and muffins. All right, so the vision error rate has dropped significantly. Google now can tell you when you search for puppies, you don't get muffins, or vice versa. Also, speech-to-text translation, which those of us who deal with Google and Siri, we may not believe it, but the speech-to-text translation rates are now below 5%. The combination of IoT, 5G, and AI has been called a Cambrian explosion that will disrupt virtually all sectors. All right, some more AI, some more cases here. Without 5G and AI, fully autonomous vehicles will be impossible. Case 2, robotic surgery. By 2024, the estimated surgical robot market will be $20.8 billion. Remote robotic surgery and precision robotic surgery can improve outcomes, patient convenience, and reduce cost. Security, availability, and reliability are important and key dimensions of 5G networks. Another case here, remote control of production line robotics. Again, 5G and these other enabling technologies. Simultaneous translation, real time, having a universal translator. We're starting to get there, and when we have the ability to communicate at those high speeds, 100 times faster than today, then we'll be able to have reliable translation real time. All right, another technology which can help, and I know that a lot of these technologies are also high on the hype cycle, if you're familiar with the hype cycle. So they're buzzwords that you hear a lot, but at the same time, you hear them a lot because there's something important under the cover there. Blockchain or distributed ledger can add integrity to histories of transactions. Just like in a paper ledger, except in a distributed ledger, you have many, many copies of this ledger that are using cryptography and hashing to ensure that the timestamps and the data maintains integrity. And so one of the things that I really just want to point out here is if you look at the picture on the right, now you've got machine-to-machine or peer-to-peer communications, because you can have you can have that level of trust. You don't need to go through a central clearinghouse. Smartphones have commoditized the mobile device computing stack and made it faster and cheaper, so we can now take that computing stack and apply it to even smaller sensors and devices. New technology, new manufacturing techniques, and a paradigm shift in how we think about using sensors for consumers, cities, the power grid, vehicles, manufacturing, and other uses is required. The demand for IoT will rapidly grow as society finds new and beneficial uses for this revolutionary advance in technology. IoT is the next frontier of innovation. I didn't make that up. I read that somewhere. That's what they're calling it. And so what we see here is various platforms, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and so on, providing platforms so that you can connect up your consumer devices. You can use their platform and quickly develop and deploy IoT devices. And this gets to be very interesting. With these standardized platforms, one that recently was announced is the Alexa Connection Kit. It allows many devices to be connected to the internet by writing just a few lines of code. And so now with your home hub from Amazon, with Alexa, you're now able to connect all these other things in your house, like your ceiling fan and your toaster, and so on. They also have the simple outlets that you can manage through that as well. You see a kit here on the right that's being developed. It's a little bit large. The future of IoT is going to be much more ubiquitous and pervasive and cheap and distributed in low power and small as a grain of sand. So I guess we're going to see every type of device that we can think of connected to the internet. Like we saw in the opening video, your son might use the trash can to turn on the TV. As opposed to traditional computers with a security model, we're opening the door for a fabric of IoT to cover our lives, and most of these devices will be connected without fully thinking about how to secure them and maintain privacy. So now we're just hooking things up left and right because we can, without really thinking out the ramifications. And so does anybody remember the dolls that communicate over the internet? They listen to what your children are saying and then send that out so that Barbie can then give you some feedback. We've had baby monitors that were hacked in the last couple years. And we're looking at parents who want to track their kids wherever they go, give them a watch so mom can communicate with the kids and know on the map where the kids are in the city. At the same time, all of these things that may make the parents feel more comfortable also is sending private information about our children out to the internet where it can be attacked. And it has been. So for consumers, security, privacy, and safety are top concerns. They're not always thought of today, but they need to be. Poor or non-existent security is built into devices. The devices from the past 15 years are particularly weak. They come with built-in passwords. They're not upgradable. Consumers don't know how to segment or create a hardened home network. They just want to plug and play. Family members travel with devices, so just like at the enterprise, not everything's behind your home firewall. Your kids are out on cellular networks. They're on Wi-Fi access points that are public. And while monitoring your children sounds like a great use case, you have to realize that this data is out there and being collected. And others can monitor you and your children as you use social media and IoT. As we start to connect our automobiles and toasters and power grids and factory systems, we can cross the physical world boundary and create what we refer to as cyber-physical systems. These systems can have real safety concerns. Unauthorized control of an IoT device in the future, or some today, could cause physical damage or harm. Imagine your autonomous car if it's hacked while you're driving down the interstate. So now let's look at the challenges that we have for critical that software does. IT teams also don't understand operational technology. I talked about building lighting or HVAC systems or other things that you want to connect and manage over the internet. And so if they don't understand Zigbee and they don't understand SCADA and the various other protocols that operational technology uses, because all they know is TCP/IP, then they often will orphan those technologies or those devices and say, well, the business owner bought it, they need to manage it. And that opens up a security hole. IT teams often don't set up and manage sensors and other specialized devices. They may not even know they're there. Having an air gap doesn't equate to security. Does anybody remember Stuxnet? Nuclear power plant, Iran, they have an air gap. Somebody picks up a USB stick, puts it in a computer. And so those air gaps, because we have humans in the equation, can still be overcome. And attacks on IoT can manifest and spread much faster because we have the high communication rate, we have machine-to-machine and peer-to-peer coming more and more. And these attacks can fly under the radar because the IT teams don't know what to look for until something bad happens. So this was a bad day at an Iranian power plant. What happens, and I'm not an electrical engineer, but if you reverse the polarity and you have that big turbine spinning, that's a lot of physical damage. That's a lot of momentum there if you decide you're going to stop that and make it go the other direction. So this actually happened. So Bruce Schneier recently published a book, Click Here to Kill Everybody, Security and Survival in a Hyper-Connected World. And I think, the bottom line is the more and more of our things that are connected together, especially when we're talking about our business processes, when we're talking about our critical infrastructure, that if our televisions, our toasters, the blinds in the living room, everything that we can think of throughout our daily life is now connected to the internet, we become more and more at risk. And if we don't handle that risk, we become more and more vulnerable. And we know that adversaries are shortening the time cycle from a sophisticated exploit to when it's available and commoditized on the dark web. And so anybody who wants to attack someone can go out and buy a botnet. They can create a denial of service if they don't like a company. They can do all sorts of things that used to require a lot of money and sophistication, because now the bar has been lowered. Nation states are developing these exploits, and a lot of these then make it out there for consumers. And when you have devices that are everywhere, even if a small percentage of them are vulnerable and exploited by some new attack, it can spread very rapidly and do a lot of damage. So the more connected we are, the more at risk we are, and the more we have to take this seriously. If we go back to the 70s and someone attacked a mainframe, it probably didn't affect you in your daily life, unless it was air traffic control. Whoops. There we go. All right, so we've got adversaries and their attacks. So some of you may have heard of the Mirai botnet. This happened in 2016. They had hundreds of thousands of cameras, routers, and digital video recorders that were taken over and used in a huge denial of service attack that shut down websites of large companies for several hours. Mirai is still out there. And today, 40% of home appliances globally are still being used for botnet attacks, according to Gartner. Many people still have home routers that are vulnerable and or exploited. And if they're connected to the internet and they're vulnerable, then the adversary has ownership of them. When we think about so security-minded people need to think about functionality and the unintended purposes. The developers often think about functionality, but they don't look at what somebody with bad intentions might do. A home thermostat might help you conserve energy, but at the same time, it might tell criminals when you're home and when you're away. And what happens if you turn everybody's refrigerator up or everybody's home thermostat up? Will that take down the power grid? Will that have societal impacts? So regulations can be good, bad, and ugly. They may be necessary because this industry is young and evolving and growing very rapidly. If we don't take time to consider security and privacy, we may deploy millions of devices that we later find to be insecure, and it may take decades to replace them. This is what happened with, the ICS for nuclear power plants. Those were intended to be replaced every 20 years over a long period of time. And when they were found to be vulnerable, there wasn't really an update process in place. So in California, there's a new cybersecurity bill covering IoT, making California the first state with such a law. It's kind of being compared to GDPR in Europe, but it has been passed, and it says that manufacturers that have devices that connect to the internet can't rely on default passwords, and when the consumers use them the first time, they have to change the password. Some think this is a good step. Others think that this is overkill. Oftentimes, the bad is or the ugly, when government steps in and is too specific about technology, such as with encryption, then that being codified into law, it becomes stale and ineffective quickly. So I tried to come up with a combined list from reading some things and thinking about this of general principles for industry, for manufacturers and our industry for protecting IoT. We need our communication protocols to be secure. We need to enable remote management capabilities and timely patch management for software and firmware. And so if you don't have remote management capabilities, then the only other option, and I'm familiar with this in the factory, is you have to go there and connect up an RS-232 cable or something to it and manually reconfigure it. That's very complicated and time-consuming. Some don't have any ability to be updated. You buy it, and if you don't like it, you have to buy a new one. The hardware should be more tamper-resistant. We should provide procedures for secure device disposal. We don't often think about that. We think about it maybe with laptops and computers now. We might wipe our phones if we're going to give our phone back to AT&T. But all of these multitudes of IoT devices may be retaining data, which may be sensitive. They may be retaining keys or cryptographic information. We need to enable password management and strong authentication. The passwords need to be not just what's default out of the box. Minimizing device bandwidth can help to prevent IoT devices from being used in botnets to create distributed denial of service attacks. Maybe we need something like, you know, the UL for certification, some kind of IoT security and privacy certification board or organization. And we need more professionals who are sensitive to these, how these devices work and these issues. And traditional, you know, IT network security folks don't have an appreciation for everything that's involved in this technology. All right, so what can we do? At our homes, I would say, you know, think about what you're doing. Research what you're doing before you buy and deploy new technology. Discuss it with your family. What are the privacy considerations? Is everybody okay with that? Think about how the data flows, and maybe you need additional layers of security to mitigate some of that risk. You know, maybe you need to, your kids need to be using a VPN, or you need to have other sorts of monitoring or rules. In industry, I think the first step is, and it's also the first critical security control, is to take inventory. Know what you have. If you don't know what you have, where it is, what it does, who's responsible for it, then you really don't have a handle on what those devices are. And it becomes harder and harder. With IoT, perhaps you have to treat this as a class of device and say, what are they, where are they, how are we using them, what are the rules around this? How do we know when they're, you know, if you have all of these sensors deployed and you find out that there's a vulnerability, what's your process for addressing that? Do you have one? Or do you just, are you just going to react? If you know your inventory, then you can start to establish your posture. Are these patched? What versions are they running? Have we go through an audit that you're actually following your policies and processes? We can implement better network segmentation and limit internet access. So network segmentation is the idea that by restricting traffic, if damage is done, the damage is at least more localized and limited. It's harder said than done, especially on large, diverse legacy networks. It's hard to get the money, it's hard to get attention from the business until something bad happens. We need to apply our policies and procedures consistently around accounts. I mentioned not using default passwords, changing passwords, strong authentication. Administrative access controls. Does the shop floor machine press operator need to have access to that? Does he need to put his USB drive with music and other things that he downloaded from the internet into that factory system? And perhaps whitelisting applications so that the important systems are only running the things that they should. I would say follow industry best practice and consult with experts because you don't know everything. And use monitoring where you can to monitor for anomalous behavior and threats on your network. And then just use this cycle of improvement to establish your current state, plan, measure, and improve, and rinse and repeat. So I have some additional resources, but we don't have time for more videos. So it's now 8:01, and I think that's all that I have to share. Thank you.